how do we restore the gut lining? So there's these larger considerations I've spoken about, but from a more practical level, there are things you can do day to day to add into your routine that will actually really support this. So first of all is this idea of mucilaginous herbs and foods that is really this kind of soft and slippery texture that will help to repair and coat. It's really about like coating that mucosal lining and the barrier. And by doing that, it actually helps the body to reestablish filtration, meaning that it's going to know what to absorb and what to eliminate. So these are going to be from a herbal perspective, there's a lot of herbs that when you brew them, even just as a tea, they'll have this really slimy quality. It's going to be things like slippery elm and marshmallow root. But also from a food perspective, you're going to see this kind of texture in things like aloe vera. Also in certain algae, for example, agar is one that you can just kind of add. It's like some people use it in replacement for gelatin, and it creates this kind of gooey mixture, and that can be profoundly soothing if you're somebody who has a history of a lot of inflammation in the gut, rather than someone who has a massive amount of buildup in the gut and you're working towards more repairing the gut. Then these are foods that you want to be adding in. And then naturally occurring also in foods like okra, like that's one vegetable that really has that kind of slimy material. Also taro root, you'll see these in a lot of different plants if you're creating like warm congees. And also foods like squashes are really, really supportive to the gut lining because they really help to nourish also the nervous system and the nerves in the gut. And they're very soothing, but they're not as heavy as starches. So if your gut is highly sensitive, these are just phenomenal ingredients to incorporate because they don't require a lot of digestive power to metabolize, but they're also going to be profoundly soothing. If you think about it, they're very grounding foods, squashes, right? All of those, like we spoke about in module 1, the orange, the kind of earthy foods, they're all really there to support blood and yin and constitutional qi in the body. They're very grounding, they're very rooting, and they help the immune response because they actually strengthen the self. They strengthen your ability to hold together that which you are. And this is a key concept in dietary therapy and Chinese medicine. There are certain foods that hold us in place. And so the art there is knowing that when you're restoring your immune system, there has to be some degree of these foods. You don't want to just be doing clearing and releasing because you need that balance of restoring the strength of your own internal system. Finally, really keeping an eye to avoid overstimulation because if you think of, a weakened gut lining somewhat as like a cut on your body, you would really make sure that you don't, get any heat or dust or any aggressive particles in that cut on your skin. So it's same thing in your gut, right? You don't want anything that's going to aggravate it. So I know a lot of people like to use fermented foods, but this is truly a call to avoid anything like vinegary, fermented, anything active in that way, even overly strong fruits like citrus, anything that's going to be somewhat aggressive, hot spices, right? Even the healing spices, you might need to tone it down if your problem is the permeability of the gut, because you want to make sure that you're not exacerbating any inflammation. And then obviously the non-foods like the stimulants, the chocolate, the garlic, these things are going to be very aggressive and not supportive at all. And then as always, knowing that parasympathetic state is what really allows that rehydration and that repair. So just like I spoke about earlier, your tissues, they have their own consciousness. So the tissues of the gut lining, in order for them to really be fully supported, you have to be supporting the repair of your body from the level of your consciousness as well. We know that this is really just foundational, not just to cure leaky gut, but also all of the internal imbalances that we undergo. This is going to be where that begins and where that can also end. And scientifically, we see that these glial cells in the gut, in the enteric system, they really do respond to stress and inflammation. So it goes both ways. Like we heal the mind through healing the gut, but also all of the gut receptors are actually responding to cortisol, serotonin, histamine, to our responses to the environment. So that also means that our emotional weather is actually going to alter this internal landscape. So the science is there that there is no gut healing if we're not working on the mind. And I know it's the last thing we want to work on, but it is a key factor in determining whether or not the internal repair of the cells will occur or not.